right, I think we are live, or just about. Welcome everybody, thanks for joining us this morning. We're doing another Living Well Wednesday on voting. We're really lucky to be joined by the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition. We have Jenny Neugart and Wendy Heyn from the Disability Vote Coalition with us this morning to talk about the upcoming spring primary election and all the stuff you're going to need to know to vote either in person or by mail, and the status of your ballot and all that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them. If you have any questions, please go ahead and leave them in the chat, either on Zoom or on Facebook. I will be sure to capture those questions and share them with Jenny and Wendy, and make sure we get some answers for you. So go ahead and take it away.
All right, great. Thanks, Caitlin. So I'm Jenny Neugart. I'm also with the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, and the board, along with Disability Rights Wisconsin, coordinates the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition. And the Vote Coalition is a nonpartisan group that's really focused on making sure people with disabilities understand their rights to vote, understand the voting process, so they can be part of that process. They can have their voice heard. So we have a group of organizations that meet monthly and talk about different kinds of voting issues. Everybody from like People First Wisconsin, NAMI, we've got independent living centers, League of Women Voters, lots of organizations that really care about this issue working together. And we'll tell you more about how you can get involved in the Vote Coalition if you'd like to be involved towards the end of the presentation. And I'd like to let Wendy introduce herself before we move into the nuts and bolts of it.
Hi, I'm Wendy with Disability Rights Wisconsin. I co-lead the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition with Jenny, and love working with all the partner agencies, working on voting access and voter outreach. And we're really excited to be here with you to share about the spring primary election. And so we'll get into telling you about that now. I think Jenny's going to start us out.
So we appreciate this opportunity because this is actually a very important election coming up on April 6th. And it's not on a lot of people's radar. It seems from what we're hearing, there's kind of one of two things going on. People are just a little burned out from the November presidential election, or they just don't know about this upcoming election. So it's April 6th, and there are some very important offices that will be elected. The biggest one that most people are familiar with is the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. There's also Court of Appeals judges all over the state, circuit court judges, and then many local offices that really impact people's day-to-day life. So we're going to walk you through each of these so you understand the roles. So the State Superintendent of Public Instruction is the head of the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. So they oversee basically all the public schools and the public libraries as well. So that leadership, whoever's in that role, is looking at ways to improve schools, looking at how well they perform, and their leadership is going to trickle down to the local school districts in terms of how our students are served. So for our purposes, we are especially interested in superintendent candidates that have a strong background in special education issues. So this person is elected to a 4-year term. Governor Tony Evers held that office previously. That's where he came from. And he did a pretty good job. And then Carolyn Stanford Taylor took over. She's currently in that position and is not running for re-election. It is a nonpartisan office, so there's no, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. It says no term limit, but that is correct, right? Wendy, there's no term limit, but it's a 4-year term. So they could serve multiple terms. but it's not considered a Democrat or a Republican position. It's nonpartisan. And again, it's just making sure that school districts meet their responsibilities for students receiving special education services. So we have a newly created state superintendent fact sheet that's got a little bit more information if people want to download that from our website. There are 2 candidates. There was a primary earlier, and now it's down to Dr. Jill Underly and Dr. Deb Kerr. So we put their websites on there if you want to find out more information about them. You can also watch the recording of a candidate forum that the Disability Vote Coalition put together, very specific to special education issues. So we asked about, I think it ended up being like 19 questions, very specific to special education. And you can see how they answered each of those questions. So if you're not familiar with these candidates, we really encourage you to take some time to learn a little bit more about their background so you can make an informed decision. So those are really great ways there to help you do that. The other thing that people are going to be voting for across the state are circuit court judges. And I don't think people truly understand how impactful those judges can be. So there are 249 circuit court judges. So obviously there's at least one in every county. They're elected again in nonpartisan elections to serve 6-year terms. So again, nonpartisan means they're not Democrat, they're not Republican. The circuit courts are the main trial courts for civil and criminal cases. And then they also hear cases appealing from municipal courts and administrative hearings. So what that kind of means, if you boil it down to how that impacts us in the disability world, is these are the judges that decide guardianships. They decide if someone's going to be committed for mental health purposes, termination of parental rights, child in need of protection services. So really important things that we deal with day to day in the disability arena. These are the judges that decide that. So it's important, again, to do your homework and find out who is running in your area so you can make a really good informed decision. Again, we also made a circuit court judge fact sheet because we knew a lot of people aren't really aware of what the role is of those judges. So you can check that out on our website. And then some of the other local offices that you're probably going to see, a lot of school boards have elections going right now. It could be your mayor or city councils, alderpersons. There's lots of referendums in individual communities. So what we recommend is going to the My Vote Wisconsin website and click on Preview My Ballot. So there's a direct link there. And you just type in your address and you get your ballot exactly as you're going to see it when you vote. So you know exactly who the candidates are. I just looked mine up, I think a day or two ago. I've been looking every day waiting for the ballot because I knew we had several elections going on and I wanted to know who the candidates were. And I did my homework this week and figured out who I want to pick for our city council. But it's a great way to find out what's going to be on the ballot so you're not surprised, especially with referendums. I think we all know that referendums are notorious for just bad wording that's really hard to understand what they're really asking. So I always like to preview my ballot and make sure I understand the topic. And again, these local offices are so important because these are really the people making decisions right where you live. So you feel those decisions, I think, a lot more than even like the presidential election, where it may take a while for things at the federal level to trickle down and impact you. It's these local offices that decide things like which roads are going to be fixed in your town and what's going to happen within your schools and how the budget's going to be spent. So those are the people that you really want to get to know and have a say in who is leading your community. So some of the key dates for this April 6th election, you need to register by April 2nd in your clerk's office by 5 p.m. Or in Wisconsin, you can register the same day as we vote. So you can register at your polling place by 8 p.m. and still be able to vote that day. For your absentee ballot request, you need to make a request as a regular voter by April 1st, or if you're an indefinitely confined voter, you need to do that by April 2nd. However, if you wait until those deadlines, chances are you might not even receive the ballot by election day. You certainly aren't going to receive it, be able to fill it out and return it by election day. So you've got plenty of time if you requested the ballot today or this week that you would get it and have time to return it. So we strongly encourage people, that is a deadline, but please don't wait until that deadline. And then if you have an absentee ballot, it must be returned to your municipal clerk no later than 8 p.m. on election day. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about voting absentee, and then Wendy will talk about voting in person. Again, requesting it as soon as possible, talking to your friends, making sure they're requesting their ballot. The other thing I want to make mention of, when you request an absentee ballot, you can do it for the whole year, or you can do it for specific elections if when you make your request. So this is going to be actually the last election of this year already. But in future years, when there's multiple elections, you can just make the request once and then you don't even have to think about it again. We strongly encourage you to follow the directions carefully. If you miss something, your ballot might not get counted. So one of the things that a lot of people miss is putting the address of the person who witnessed your ballot. So you can see our visual there with the address highlighted. That's one of the #1 reasons that absentee ballots might get rejected. So somebody has to watch you do your ballot, sign it, but also put their address. You can request assistance to help fill out your ballot. We know people who are low vision or blind, especially, are having a hard time with the absentee ballot because it's not screen reader accessible. So they often have to rely on someone to read the ballot to them and help them fill it out. As a coalition, we are actually working on that as a policy issue, because everyone should have a right to vote privately and independently, and that takes that right away for people who are blind and low vision. So you can ask for help, and you will need a witness. We'll talk about that a little more. And again, encourage you, as soon as you get the ballot, fill it out and return it right away to make sure it gets there. Some places, bigger cities in particular, might have drop boxes that you can put it in if you do it through the mail, or if you want to hand deliver it on election day. So how do you request an absentee ballot? The easiest way, if you have the access, is to do it online through the My Vote Wisconsin website. It's an amazing website that's got just loads of information right at your fingertips. The thing I want to make you aware of is the first time you request that absentee ballot online, you need to upload a photo ID. And that can be a sticking point for some people who either don't have the technology or just don't know how to do it, because you have to take a picture and you have to upload it to your computer, and then you have to upload it to the website. So if that's not a barrier, it's a really easy way to do it online. You can also request it by mail. There's an application for an absentee ballot on the Wisconsin Election Commission website, and you just print that off, fill it out, and mail it to your municipal clerk. Again, you need to provide a copy of your photo ID. So you'd have to make a photocopy of that and submit it with your ballot request. You can email your clerk as well, and just make sure they have your full name, your voting address, the election you want the ballot for, or you can ask for the whole calendar year. And if it's going to be mailed to a different address, what address you want it to be mailed to. Again, you need a copy of that photo ID unless it's already on file. And then you can also do it in person. You can go to your municipal clerk's office and ask for an absentee ballot there. So lots of different ways to do it. But again, I would get on it quickly if you haven't done that yet. So the witness for the ballot, the purpose of the witness is just to make sure that you are the person who completed the ballot. They're not supposed to know who you voted for. So, you know, they can be across the room or something where you're clearly able to tell that they're filling out the ballot, but that you can't see what they're choosing. And then signing the envelope with their signature and that address, their full address, street, city, zip code. And then you or your assistant must sign and date the certificate on the return envelope on signature of voter. So you can kind of see the signature of voter goes up on top, and then the witness has its own box down there. So again, very important that you follow the instructions to make sure it's counted. People that can be a witness, they do have to be a US citizen and over the age of 18, but it can really be anybody. It can be a friend, a spouse, neighbor, family member. It could be a care worker if someone comes in to assist you. It just can't be an employer or a union representative. So some communities have those drop-off locations and may be able to witness your ballot. We saw that especially last April and with the presidential election, where sometimes there were drive-through voting options that you're probably not going to see that as much in this election because it will be much smaller, but there may be staff available that could witness you filling out your ballot if you have difficulty finding someone. We're still in the COVID era, so you could have somebody witness you do it through a window. I'm sitting in front of my window right now. They could easily watch me do it, and then I could hand it to them out my door, and they could sign it and then give it back to you to return. If you're still having trouble finding a witness, contact your municipal clerk, and they're going to be the best person to help you work through that issue. If you don't know who your municipal clerk is, again, if you go to that My Vote website and you put in your address, it'll tell you exactly who your person is and phone number, address, everything you know to contact them. And then a lot of people with the absentee ballot, it's kind of new for people to vote absentee since the pandemic hit. So they're worried, did the ballot get back and did my vote actually get counted? So the My Vote website, if you do request it electronically, has this awesome tracker that is kind of like the Domino's tracker that says we got it, we put it in the oven, it's coming out. So it'll tell you when you submit the correct request. Most often they approve it right away, when they're preparing to send it, when it was actually sent, an anticipated delivery date. And then once you've returned it, there's this last box that says they received it. And they do have a certain time limit to update this box. So if you don't see it right away, that doesn't necessarily mean they didn't receive it. But if you are getting worried, you can definitely call the municipal clerk directly and double check that. And I know some people have done that and feel much better. I know in my particular community, mine's always gotten up there right away. So I've never had to worry, but you know, larger communities in particular, like in Milwaukee or Madison, just their sheer volume, it may take them a little bit longer to get in there and update that. So one of the most important things I want people to be aware of is if you did request your absentee ballot and it never arrived, you can go vote on election day and just tell them you didn't get the ballot. So you didn't lose your opportunity to vote. You can still do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Wendy to talk about voting in person.
So I'm going to talk to you about voting in person. And some things that you can do to make that easier or make sure that you're able to do that. So some of our suggestions are to be prepared. And I know Jenny mentioned that you can print out a sample ballot and that she had done that. I actually did that as well because those smaller offices or the offices that are more local, I guess I should say, are ones that I really care about, but a lot of times I'm not even aware of who's running. So, and sometimes it can be a little bit harder to find information about the people who are running. So I wanted to have time to do some digging and figure that out. So preview your ballot, because then when you go into the polling place, you're not stumped and trying to think, who do I want to vote for? I don't know if I agree with this referendum or not. I don't, whatever. You go in and you know, and so you can be quicker. And especially during this pandemic time, being quick is kind of a benefit. We always suggest that people check their polling places again, because polling places change sometimes. And that can be a big issue for people if you go to the wrong polling place. So check your polling place, even if it's where you've always gone, they can change. And especially during this pandemic time, some of them have been changing. Double check your voter registration and make sure that it's all complete, so that if it's not, that you can make sure that you bring along your proof of residence if you would need to register for some reason. We're going to talk about some voter rights later, and that can be certainly very helpful in voting. And we're also going to talk about curbside voting, which when I talk to you about it, I'm going to suggest that if you're going to use it, that you call ahead. And so that's something that you would want to do in preparation. I'm going to talk to you also about planning your transportation ahead of time. And so that's another suggestion that we would have about voting in person. If you go to vote on election day, or when you go to vote on election day, make sure that you take along your photo ID. If you vote absentee, remember Jenny mentioned that you upload that photo ID the first time that you request that ballot. And if you go in person, they're going to want to see it to prove that you are who you say you are. We suggest that you wear a mask to keep yourself and others safe. And our voter hotline is open, and you can call us. We can help you problem solve any difficulties that you might have, any questions that you have about voting. We are here to help. If we don't have an answer, we will try to help you track down an answer. So that 844-347-8683 is a number that we would love for you to use. No question is too big or too small. We'll try to figure it out for you or with you. So next slide. This is talking about that transportation issue. We said planning your transportation ahead is a great idea. So a lot of the independent living centers or ADRCs are offering free rides to go vote. We have a list of those at our website. And we have a list of other options as well, statewide, that we are aware of that are giving rides to voting. Some are free, some have small charges. But that list is not comprehensive. That doesn't mean those are the only options in your area. Those are the ones that we were made aware of. So we have that list at our website. You can also call your ADRC or your independent living center, and they may have other ideas. So planning your transportation ahead of time is a good idea. It's harder to get a ride the same day. So we have a fact sheet that gives you ideas for places that you could look for rides if transportation is an issue. So again, just plan ahead, take a look at our documents, and you can call that 1-800 number and we can help you problem solve too. We don't offer rides to the polling place, but we do have a list of agencies that do. Next slide. So a lot of us are really concerned about staying safe when we go places, and a lot of us are pretty used to doing things to stay safe right now. You know, we've been in this pandemic for a year now, and so we're getting used to it, but it's always good to have some reminder of how we can be safe. Do what we said, check out who's on your ballot so that you can get in and get out. That's going to make your process a lot quicker. And I mentioned earlier on that list of things to do to prepare, I mentioned something called curbside voting. So curbside voting is available for any voter in Wisconsin who's unable to enter their polling place because of disability or age. And in this case, if you're COVID positive, or if you are on quarantine, you could qualify for curbside voting as well. So what curbside voting is that you pull up, it's a lot like a drive-through. So you pull up to the polling place, and two poll workers will come out to your car, and they'll still want to see your ID, and you are able then to do all your voting right there at your car site, and then they take your ballot inside and submit it just like if you had gone in yourself. So curbside voting is available statewide, but it looks different in every municipality how they do it. So it's in some municipalities, they might have a doorbell that you ring and then they hear it inside and they know to come out. In some places, they want you to call a number when you get there. I've heard places say, just wail on the horn, we'll hear you. You know, it's different everywhere. So our suggestion, like in that list before that, be prepared, it said call ahead. And our suggestion is to call a few days before election day, because you're going to have trouble getting anybody on the phone on election day. So call ahead and say, how do you do curbside voting at my polling place? And they're going to be able to tell you then how to do that. Follow those directions and do curbside voting. So that's a good option for folks who can't get into the building. Again, we suggest that you check your polling place before you go, because they do change. And some polling places during COVID are offering drive-through voting to all voters, not just to voters who qualify for curbside voting. So remember, I said curbside voting is if you can't access your polling place because of your age or a disability or because you're COVID positive. So drive-through voting is like everybody drives through. I've heard of communities using like bank drive-throughs to do it as a polling place. I think that was more common like in the April election back in the early pandemic. But there may still be places offering that. I haven't heard a lot about it, but possibly. If you need to get out of your car to go vote, make sure that you're thinking about things like social distancing, washing your hands, wearing your mask, and remember that, and it's a good thing to remember all the time, the pandemic is stressful for everybody, and these poll workers, I've never talked to a poll worker who doesn't want people to vote and have a good experience voting. So they're doing their best under hard circumstances. You could bring your own black pen if you'd like, so then you don't have to touch a pen, but I think a lot of polling places are giving out pens. So, but that would be a guaranteed way that you would have a clean pen. So good suggestions for in-person voting and staying safe. Next slide. So this talks about curbside voting. I explained how it works. I explained that it's really a good idea to make sure that you call ahead, because it looks different everywhere. Every place we talk to runs theirs differently. So make sure you call ahead. You call your municipal clerk if you're calling. And one thing I forgot to mention, so remember I said that if you have symptoms of COVID-19 or are COVID positive, you could qualify for curbside voting. That also includes folks who are immune compromised. So if you're immune compromised and it just absolutely isn't safe for you to go in, then you can do curbside voting too. So curbside voting is a great option for voters who can't access the polling place physically. Next slide. So when you go into your polling place, every polling place has an accessible voting machine. And it's more noticeable in some places than others. So some polling places have these sitting out in the open with all their other cubicles, and some of them, they're harder to find, but every polling place has to have an accessible voting machine. So an accessible voting machine allows voters to privately and independently cast their ballot. So it should be positioned in a way that it's private, like that everybody walking by can't see the screen. And any voter can use the accessible voting machine. And so what it is you go to this machine and you can either use a touch screen or a keypad, and you can mark your ballot that way. And it can even has headphones that it can read it to you, read it back to you. And so any voter can ask to use the accessible voting machine at their polling place. We encourage you to try it. It's a really neat thing. And it makes voting possible, voting privately and independently possible for a lot of voters. So every polling place should have that, and you should, we just suggest try it out. Ask your polling place about it. Next slide. And then if you run into a problem, what should you do? Here are a list of places that you can contact, including our 1-800 number here, 844-347-8683, and that spells disvote. We'll help you figure it out. We'll help you answer questions. You can also call the Wisconsin Election Commission there. There's their number. They have a complaint link. We can actually help you with filing complaints as well if that's something that you need help with. So there's also a number there for Wisconsin Election Protection, and those are all options for if you run into a problem.
And I just wanted to mention too that this is sort of the order you should go into. You know, you want to contact the election inspector while you're there, and then kind of move down the list there.
Okay, next slide.
This is the next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like the same. Can you just go to the next one? There we go. So I wanted to talk with you about filing complaints. A lot of times when we file complaints, we feel like we're causing a problem or being difficult, but we really believe that in order for voters to have a smooth experience, a positive experience, we want everyone to, we want to be aware of when someone has difficulty. And when we've brought complaints to the Wisconsin Election Commission, they're very receptive. They want to help. They want voting to be a positive experience. So making a difficult situation that you've experienced, making a complaint about it actually helps that experience won't happen to someone else. So we really suggest that if you have difficulty and when you talk to your municipal clerk, it doesn't get resolved to your satisfaction, like how Jenny said, you first want to talk to your municipal clerk. We would suggest that you do file that complaint, and that way perhaps that this won't happen to another voter. So you can do that online, or you can call that number or email to ask about that. Next slide. The questions about guardianship are ones that we get a lot. It's very confusing to people sometimes what their rights are as a person under guardianship. So in Wisconsin, you keep your right to vote when you get a guardian unless the judge specifically takes that right away. So many people who have a guardian still have the right to vote. We also hear from a lot of people that they just don't know if their right was taken away at their guardianship hearing. So this slide talks about the document that you look at. You get paperwork when you go to your guardianship, and there's a specific form that you look at called the determination and order form. And you look at that and it will tell you, there's boxes that are checked, and one of them would be that you your right to vote would be taken away if that box was checked. Now we hear from people that maybe they don't have that form, or maybe it's not that easy to see or read. And so sometimes what you can do is you could contact your municipal clerk, and they have a list of people who've been adjudicated that they were incompetent. So basically, they have a list of people who are not eligible to vote, and they can look at that list and see if your name is on it. So that might be a helpful way for people to figure this out too. One thing I want to mention to you is that there are people that we also talk to who have lost the right to vote when they went through guardianship, but they would like to be a voter, and they understand the voting process, or the process of election. And those people can actually ask the court to reopen their case about to look at their case again, and they can petition for their right to vote back. And so we have some resources about how you would get started on doing that at our website, www.disabilityvote.org. And you can take a look at that if that's something that you're interested in. The next slide, please. Oh, how can I be an informed voter? So once you've figured out all the technicalities of going to vote, how you're going to get there, and you've figured out what's on your ballot, like we suggested, going to My Vote and looking at that sample ballot. Now, sometimes you think, now, who do I vote for? Who do I like better? Well, earlier in our presentation, we did post a forum that we hosted, that the Disability Vote Coalition hosted. We had both of the candidates for state superintendent there, and they were answering questions about disability specific things. So that can be, things like that forum can be really helpful to you in deciding, do I want to vote for this one, or do I want to vote for that one? Other things that you can check are Vote 411 or Ballot PDD. Those are places where they have different information about the candidates. And you can follow follow the Disability Vote Coalition on Facebook, on our newsletter. You can, in our newsletters, look at our website, where a lot of times are posting things that might be helpful to you in figuring out, you know, different resources that you could look at to help you be a more informed voter. So that's a way for you to know better, you know, who you'd like to vote for, or how to be an informed voter. Let's talk about your rights as a voter with a disability. So you have the right to vote privately and independently. Remember, I talked about the accessible voting machine at your polling place. That's the third thing you have a right to here, but that accessible voting machine allows voters to vote privately and independently. So you have that right. You have the right to physically access the polling place. That means that it needs to be an ADA compliant space. And you have the right to that accessible voting machine. You have the right to ask for accommodations, like a chair to sit in, a signature guide. You have the right to assistance stating your name and address. One of the requirements of voters in Wisconsin is that when you come in to vote, you state your name and address. And if voters have a reason, like a speech reason or a hearing reason that they can't state their name and address, they can certainly have assistance to do that. You also have the right to assistance marking your ballot. You can bring someone with you to help you mark your ballot, or you can ask a poll worker for help. The only thing you can't do is ask your union representative or your employer about that. So next slide, please. You have the right to that curbside voting that I described to you if you physically can't get into your polling place, or if if you're unable to for the reasons of disability or age, or remember we talked about immune compromised. You can file a complaint like we talked about. You have that right. You can also bring a cheat sheet. So you can write down who you want to vote for, especially, you know, some of us have a lot of things on our ballot coming up. So you can just jot yourself a cheat sheet. That's absolutely allowed and fine. If you make a mistake, you can request a replacement ballot from a poll worker. They'll need to take the ballot that you made the mistake on, because they have a process for what to do with that ballot, but then they can just give you a new one. And you have the right to be the voter. You are the voter. That means that no one should tell you how to vote. Not even your guardian, if you have a guardian. Not the person who drove you there, not the witness who signs your absentee ballot. You're the only one who gets to decide how you vote. Next slide. So here is our information at the Disability Vote Coalition. We have subcommittees that you can join. One is education and outreach. Another is accessibility. If you're interested in that, contact us at that info@disability at info@disabilityvote.org. We have fact sheets. Jenny pointed out that we have one about the circuit court judges. We have one about the state superintendent. We have a lot of different fact sheets that you're welcome to download, print. You can contact us and we can print them and send them to you. We have videos that are available online. Check out our website and follow us on Facebook. We have daily posts explaining lots of different things about voting, explaining current things that are going on with voting. So make sure to follow us on Facebook. And then you can use that 1-844-DISVOTE number, and you can call us with any questions or concerns that you have. So here is all of our contact information. And we just really appreciate you having us, and we just hope that you will vote on April 6th and in all future elections.
And please tell a friend, tell a couple friends. Like I said, this election seems to be under the radar for a lot of people, so please spread the word.
Awesome. Thanks, both of you, so much. I've been monitoring the chats both here on Facebook, and there were a couple questions, but you guys answered them. There was one in particular about bringing a cheat sheet with you, so I'm glad that we got that question answered. This presentation is going to be saved. The recording's already going to be saved on Facebook, so if you want to follow the Facebook pages, you'll be able to see it, but it'll also be on the BPDD YouTube channel. So we'll make that recording available. And I think Wendy and Jenny are going to share this PowerPoint with us. So we'll make sure that the link to that is included so that all of these links that were throughout the presentation, you can have access to as well. Because I've been putting them in the chat on Facebook and in the chat here on Zoom, but it'll be an easy place for you to find all of them on the presentation. So with that, thank you guys so much for joining us this morning. And I think we're all wrapped up here.